Good evening. Welcome to tonight's meeting. I'd just like to start by letting people know in the gallery that, excuse me, the meeting is being broadcast on the internet and the recording of the meeting will be published on the Council's website. As a visitor in the public gallery, you may be filmed. By remaining in the public gallery, you consent to being filmed and for the recording of you to be made publicly available by the Council. A copy of the Council's live streaming and recording Council meetings policy is available at the back of the room and on the Council's website. So please speak with one of our staff members if you have any questions in relation to that. I'd also like to start the meeting by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on whose land we meet this evening, that is the Waterfront people, and pay my respects to the elders past and present. I'd also like to acknowledge members of our Junior Council with us this evening, in particular the Junior Mayor, Josie Horn, and I'd also like to acknowledge that we have the first Highton and Grovedale Scout Group in this evening, so welcome to City Hall. Apologies. We have one apology from Councillor Grisbeck this evening. Are there any more to be noted? No? If not, we'll keep moving. Thank you. We have a number of leave of absences to be granted. The first is for myself from the 6th of June to the 9th of June inclusive and the 16th of June to the 27th of June inclusive. I'll move in a seconder, please, for the leave. Thank you, Councillor. Move Councillor Asher. Seconded, Councillor Mason. Those in favour? Those against? That is carried. Thank you. Our second leave of absence is to grant Councillor Aiken leave from the 31st of May to the 9th of June. Move in a seconder, please. Please move Councillor Contell. Seconded, Councillor Mansfield. Those in favour? Those against? That is carried. Thank you. We have leave of absence for Councillor Grisbeck from the 21st of June to the 8th of July, inclusive. Move in a seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Aiken. Move. Seconded, Councillor Mansfield. Those in favour, those against. Thank you. And our last one is for leave of absence for Councillor Mansfield from the 22nd of July to the 2nd of August, inclusive. Moved Councillor Murray. Seconded, Councillor Asher. Those in favour, those against. That is carried.
Everyone's going.
Thank you. With no one left.
Must be a bit colder.
We'll have quorum, Mr Mayor.
We'll be fine.
It's a fixed order.
The next item is the confirmation of minutes of the ordinary meeting on the 30th of April. We'll move in a seconder, please. Move Councillor Sullivan, seconded Councillor Manane. Those in favour, those against, that is carried. Thank you. Are there any declarations of conflicts of interest to be noted this evening? None at this stage. If any arise, please let us know and we'll take the appropriate action. This is an opportunity. Our next item is an opportunity to welcome our Junior Mayor, Josie Horn, and for Josie to have the opportunity to address us this evening and perhaps bring us up to date with a little bit of the work that she's been leading on the Junior Council. So, Josie, welcome. It's great to have you here, and we look forward to the Junior Mayor's message. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge the Waterfront people, the traditional owners of this land. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. And pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Good evening, Mayor Bruce Harwood, Greater Geelong councillors and directors, youth councillors and guests. My name is Josie Horn. I'm proud to be your Junior Mayor for 2019 and I will be presenting to Council on a quarterly basis regarding recommendations we as a Youth Council have concluded and provide a reflection upon what we have achieved and are planning towards. From our first meeting, all of us Youth Councillors knew that this initiative would be a great success, and so it has. We have made tremendous progress from the meetings we've had so far, having already attended a local youth event and identified 4 key priority areas which we will base our future endeavours upon. As a group of young people, we bounce ideas off each other, working as a collective to come up with complex projects that everyone is excited about. I have been proud to be a part of each of our meetings, and not only are we quick to think of new ideas, but we all genuinely enjoy each other's company and are so grateful to be part of this diverse youth council. Our diverse range of personalities, ideas and values is reflected in our youth charter, which we have brainstormed and completed together. Although all of us are unique individuals, this charter highlights our similar values of respect, empathy and inclusiveness. During this same meeting, we developed the Youth Council Annual Plan and Protocols, which we'll base our actions upon. Councillors have a copy of this plan and can view the Youth Charter on page 9. As your Youth Council, we have decided upon 4 specific portfolios that we will base our actions upon. The portfolio areas are mental health and wellbeing, the environment, community safety and homelessness, and organising Geelong's first Youth Summit. These portfolios are mentioned in detail on page 15, but I will elaborate on this shortly. On the 11th and 12th of May, Geelong Youth Councillors met to attend a 2-day Gold World Summit in order to gain crucial experience and first-hand knowledge into what running a summit takes. From the Guild World event, we learnt that it takes a lot of hard work and dedication, but we as a Youth Council are prepared to put it in and make this inaugural event one that the region's young people won't forget. We learnt about the power of advertising and its necessity to a great summit, as well as the effectiveness of a colour scheme and how practical ideas can spark curiosity in an instant. These are some of the many ideas that we will emphasise in our Youth Summit, which will take place on Saturday the 26th of October. We were also grateful to have been introduced to an innovative and interactive surveying program, which we are currently using to gain vital information from young people about our priority areas and how we can address them most effectively. I'll present these findings on behalf of the Youth Council in my next Council presentation. Although we have only had 3 meetings thus far, your Youth Council has learnt all the background knowledge we need to move forward so we can implement this knowledge into projects which will benefit a vast range of young people within the community. We've already defined ourselves by our values and areas we believe in. Now we are excited to act upon these values and define ourselves by our actions. The purpose of tonight's presentation to Council is to highlight the Youth Council's annual plan and protocols, which councillors currently have a copy of. Some key events for us include the Geelong Youth Awards and the Geelong Youth Summit, but councillors can view the annual plan that we're abiding by on pages 12 to 14. Our meeting schedule is also on these pages, and I'll be presenting to Council quarterly to inform and update Council of our work, as well as make recommendations to any actions we feel appropriate. As a result of brainstorming and similar concerns raised by many councillors, your Youth Council has decided to undertake 4 key priority areas for the year. We will base our actions and projects upon these portfolios to create a Geelong that is better equipped to engage with these priorities and their relationship to young people. We want to reduce the social stigma associated with mental health issues and educate young people so they know it's okay to seek help and that gaining help isn't nearly as hard as they might think. Your Youth Council is concerned with community safety and homelessness. We want to ensure that as many young people as possible can feel safe wherever they are, and that those at risk of homelessness can gain access to support and outreach services to lower this risk. We are all passionate about protecting the environment and living with prosperity, and we want to encourage all to live alongside the environment and not on top of it. Finally, the Youth Council will prioritise the Youth Summit, and we will raise these priority areas at our summit in an interactive, fun and informative way so we can make a great impact on our community. At each meeting, I will update Council regarding the specific achievements of each portfolio, so you are all aware of our passion and projects within these priorities. To conclude, we as your Youth Council are proud to have finalised our Youth Charter and our annual plan and protocols, as well as highlighting areas that we will address throughout the year. Currently, the Youth Council has developed a youth survey with target questions that will help us gain the community's perspective on our priority areas and ways in which we can best engage with young people regarding these issues. I will present to Council next on Tuesday the 23rd of July and update you all with the results of the youth survey and our progress on the community safety and homelessness portfolio. Thank you.
Thank you, Josie. You can't help but get a sense of, I guess, the discussion being very similar to discussions we have at at the council level, but I guess it's through a slightly different lens of the youth of our community. So it's really reassuring to see we have such vibrant, I guess, minds working in these spaces. And we do appreciate it, and we will be certainly taking on board a number of the recommendations and concerns you do bring to us. Again, thanks, Josie. Much appreciated.
Excuse me, Mr Mayor, can I just ask Josie, do you want to just mention the names of each of the Youth Council members that are here tonight? Because we also should applaud them as well too, if that's possible. And we should say not all aren't here because there's actually a couple sick. So, yeah.
Yes, so we're not all present today, but there's 5 of us sitting in the front row. There's Lulu Josk, Maddie Pistotsky, Lainey Cartlick, Georgia Delaney, yes, and Amelia Charleston. So that's from that side to that side. Yeah, our left to right, your right to left. Yes.
Welcome.
Yes.
So we do just want to thank them as well too. So that, yeah,
It's up to you. You're welcome to stay here. Okay.
Yeah. Stay here. Sorry.
Okay, that's all right. No problem. Now's an opportunity for public question and submission time. We have a few questions forwarded in during the week, so I'll start with those, then I'll go to members of the gallery if you'd like to come forward and ask a question. The first question is from Damien Cox. Is Damien with us this evening? No, we'll take that on notice. Our second question comes from Linda Gleave. Is Linda with us this evening? No, we'll take that on notice. And our third question came from Phil Bolch. Is Phil here this evening? Thanks, Phil.
Thanks for hearing my question. I'm Phil Bolsh. I represent Transition South Barwon, a community group based in Belmont. One of our functions is research in the realms of energy, finance and economics. We believe the creation of an energy descent action plan will allow us to have an orderly transition to an inevitable low energy future. The recent school strike for climate has rightly crystallised the issue of climate change in the public mind, and we commend Council for its many low-carbon initiatives. However, we believe there is a far more proximate issue threatening our economic system and our comfortable way of life. That is, the security of our liquid fuel supply. Liquid fuels, in particular petrol, diesel and jet fuel, are the enabling fuels that make all economic activity possible. Australia now imports more than 90% of its petroleum products, mainly from South Korea, Japan and Singapore. Geopolitical tensions in Southeast Asia and the Middle East are a constant threat to the security of global liquid fuel supply chains. Under International Energy Agency IEA rules, member countries must hold 90 days of net petroleum for use in a fuel emergency. Australia has been in breach of the IEA rules since 2010. Current reserves are just 21 days of petrol for motorists, 18 days of diesel and 20 days of aviation fuel. Some of this emergency supply is not actual fuel stored in Australia, but is in the form of ticketed fuel stored on our behalf in the Netherlands. Retired Air Vice Marshal John Blackburn has been lobbying the federal government to improve fuel security since 2014. He said, if the public panicked or an active military needed to draw from domestic stocks during a fuel supply crisis, the country would be brought to its knees within a week because Australia's food, pharmaceutical supplies, water and energy, including the distribution of fuel itself, are all reliant on petroleum. What oil we do produce cannot possibly meet demand. For those in denial about peak oil, Australia's oil production has fallen 60% since its peak in 2000. There are still hundreds of years of oil in Bass Strait, but it's not the historic $20 a barrel oil we need for our businesses to run profitably. Capital expenditure on oil exploration has fallen by more than half since 2014. The few recent oil discoveries are expensive to produce and trivial in size compared with the giant fields like Bass Strait discovered in the 1960s. The Liquid Fuels Emergency Act is under review by the federal government as we speak. In the event of a declared national liquid fuel emergency, the Energy Minister may direct relevant fuel industry corporations to make liquid fuel available for purchase only by authorised users, and it may ration the supply of fuel to retail customers. It provides for both criminal and civil penalties in the event of non-compliance. We ignore the possibility of a liquid fuels emergency at our peril, particularly with the growth of geopolitical and trade tensions. An Energy Descent Action Plan would stand the City of Greater Geelong in good stead in the event of a liquid fuel emergency. What plans does Council have to manage the consequences of a disruption to our liquid fuel supply? And which parts of the City of Greater Geelong operations do not fit the definition of an authorised user given recent amendments to the Liquid Fuel Emergency Act?
Thank you for your comments and questions this evening, Phil. The control agency for such an emergency is the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning. Our multi-agency Municipal Emergency Management Planning Committee has not considered this particular risk as yet, and as such no planning has been undertaken to this point. If you are referring to essential users, the Minister can in writing define an essential user of a particular refined liquid petroleum product if the activities of that user involve defence, provision or export of fuel, or have been the subject of a determination by the Minister. Currently, the other activities determined by the Minister involve the following: an ambulance service, a corrective service, a fire or rescue service, a police service, a public transport service, a state emergency or an equivalent organisation, and a taxi service. The City's role in supporting coordination and resourcing of emergency response and recovery activities qualify under this determination. So it's quite a broad topic that you bring, but we understand the sentiment to which you bring that to the chamber and to our attention. And but at this point, it is what we call a DWELP, Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning responsibility at the moment.
So do you mean that it's not a discussion that Council have had at this point?
That is right.
To plan around these issues. And will it be on the agenda at some point?
Well, I mean, matters raised, so we'll see where it takes us. But we do appreciate the comments and the questions this evening in raising this issue.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question of Phil, Mr. Mayor? So, Phil, how much do you think it would cost Council to have that 69 days worth of fuel in storage?
Council or
Council,
the federal government?
No, Council.
Council.
If we would have our own
90
storages.
I've got no idea. It's not my business.
Okay.
What
about the federal government?
The federal government have gone to great lengths to justify why they don't need to have it to protect presumably oil company interests, because it'll be the cost of the oil companies to have the tank farms and to pay for the actual fuel that's in storage, and so who would pay for that eventually would be the consumer, I guess.
Indeed.
But every other country in the world, every other IEA member is in compliance, but not Australia. So there's a question there.
It just goes to show that international law doesn't have to be followed.
That's right.
Okay, thanks, Phil.
Thank you.
Vicky Grosser. Thanks, Vicky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Junior Mayor, and thank you, all councillors and officers here. I'm the president of Geelong 1 Fire Reconciliation Group, and I just came to appreciate item number 4 on the agenda tonight, the hopeful decision to change the name of Stewart's Reserve to Dooleybeal, meaning Red Gum Reserve down around Armstrong Creek. And this is something which Geelong 1 Fire Reconciliation Group has been keen to have happen for a long time, and if I pause and acknowledge that we're on Wadawurrung country and pay my respects on behalf of our group and others who might want that, in addition to from your position as Mayor and Youth Mayor, we very much appreciate being on this country and the respect we have for past, and particularly for us living alongside presently the Wadarung traditional owners and the emerging communities and the more diverse Aboriginal community of Geelong, and would love there to be a lot more visibility of that history and the diverse community for all of us. And here we are in Reconciliation Week. We're also in the year of Indigenous languages, and as the community here, and traditional owners in particular, reclaim the language and bring it to share more with all of us. I think this is an exciting opportunity, and I hope at the beginning of a big flow of continuing reclaiming of language for all of us to use. And I noticed in the submissions there was just one person querying, rather than using the Wadarung word, using English for red gum. And I guess I'd like to remind us all that we all speak Wadarung every day. When we say the word Geelong, we mean a tongue of land. When we say Murrabul Street, we mean mussels, the ones we eat. When we say Balyang, we're saying bats. And in fact, I was with Corinna Eccles last night, who you all know, and she spoke about words often giving a sense of the sounds of a creature or a part of the environment. And so I think we're being invited to connect with country on a deeper level than many of us have historically done. And so great, well done, Council. I'm dashing out the door now because we have a Schools Reconciliation Week tomorrow, our first in Geelong, hosted by Geelong Library and run by the Career Education team with Wadarung traditional owners and ourselves from One Fire. And on Sunday, obviously, Reconciliation in the Park, which we'll be eagerly looking out for all of you attending. And we're pleased that Councillor Sarah Mansfield will be speaking on behalf of you all. And I'm hoping I'm not joining the croaky voices by then. So thank you all for what you do, and this is a great step in a positive direction, which we hope flows more richly in the future from the leadership, as I understand, very much initiated by the Wadarung community. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky. We appreciate the support and your comments this evening. And you may well be aware, but Kidinia Awards actually, Kidinia is...
Pardon?
Kidinia, the Kidinia Awards actually Wadarung for Sunrise, so is incorporated. But they're valid points, and we'll continue to work in that space.
Yes.
But we thank you for coming along this evening and sharing that with us.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions from the gallery this evening? Or comments? If not, we'll keep moving. Thank you. We go to petitions. Are there any petitions to be raised this evening? None? Thank you. Okay, Section B, reports. Our first item is Amendment C, 363 Central Road, Drysdale. Resolution to prepare and exhibit the amendment. Moved Councillor Mason and seconded Councillor Asher. Thank you, Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The purpose of this resolution is to seek a council resolution to prepare and exhibit Planning Scheme Amendment 363. This allows the process of rezoning an area of land in central Drysdale to allow it to be developed into residential housing. The land is bounded by Jetty Road, Wyndham Street, Thomas Street and the rear of Central Road properties, and it's currently zoned as rural living. Given its position close to shops, schools and public facilities, it was earmarked for development as far back as 1992, when it was identified in the Drysdale Clifton Springs structure plan as a suitable residential area. Mr Mayor, it's proposed to apply a development contributions plan overlay schedule to this land, and so that the Central Road Drysdale draft development contribution plan has been prepared in support of the amendment. This development contribution plan is proposed to become an incorporated document in the planning scheme and identifies $10 million in new infrastructure, including the upgrade of Jetty Road and pedestrian signals, local parks, open space trails and drainage basins. Contributions towards the Drysdale Regional Community and Learning Hub will also apply. Mr Mayor, this land involves 28 individual properties within the Drysdale-Clifton Springs settlement boundary and identified by the Greater Geelong planning scheme for rezoning to the general residential zone. And as said before, the rezoning is supported in principle by planning controls. Mr Mayor, there's been extensive landowner engagement since November 2014, and I did mention earlier in 1990 and 92 and 2010 structure plans. 7 letters in November 2014 have been sent to 7 different at different times. 7 different times letters have been sent to landowners, and in June 2016 a landowner workshop was held in Springdale Community House. So there's been a lot of community engagement. The amendment has appropriately considered social equity principles. The City has engaged with the affected landowners about the potential future rezoning to facilitate housing development. And Mr Mayor, further engagement will occur as part of this exhibition process now.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Councillor Asher.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. As Councillor Mason has explained, if this recommendation is supported, then a planning scheme amendment is the next step and will be prepared and made available for public comment. So an exhibition, an opportunity to submit and make your comments is the logical next step, and that's good news because we have had quite a few people comment and contact us about some changes that they'd like made, so I certainly support this move to public exhibition.
Thank you. May the councillors make comment? If not, I'll go... Oh, sorry, Councillor Sullivan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is an interesting situation. As we all know, the Bellarine has borne a certain grunt of the development for the City of Greater Geelong for many years. And having this area within the settlement boundaries, we do have to look towards infill as rather as expanding over possible town boundaries for future development to coincide with population growth and demand. And whilst this is coming before us now and may possibly go up for exhibition, we do have to take exceptional care to make sure that we are listening to residents within this neighbourhood. This is already an established area. It's got urban development on 3 sides and a recreational development to the just a recreational reserve to the south. So we do have to be very careful. We do listen and do consult with residents both inside and just around this development if it goes ahead.
Thank you. Any other comments to be made? Thank you, Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Certainly, as my previous councillors have said, it's out on exhibition, so if you object to it or want to have your say, please do so. I note there's some Bellarine residents there in the gallery tonight, so please make sure you have your say because that's how council will make its decision on what comes of this community consultation.
Thanks, Councillor Nelson. If there's no other comments, I'll go back to Councillor Mason to close. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you also to my colleagues who've now embellished and filled in. The word infill is actually quite appropriate, as Councillor Sullivan just mentioned. And the recently adopted 2018 settlement strategy recognised Drysdale as a district town on the Bellarine Peninsula capable of accommodating population growth. The settlement strategy directs that district town boundaries will be based generally on existing urban areas and areas already identified in policy. There's been significant community engagement, and now we'll enter a new phase where further submissions from the community input will be invited.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. I put the recommendation to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? That is carried. Thank you. Item 2 is the Youth Council Advisory Committee. Moved Councillor Sullivan and seconded Councillor Mansfield. Thank you, Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you. Council is recommended to note the Youth Council's first report, which includes its annual plan and protocols. 12 people aged 12 to 16 were elected to Greater Geelong's first ever Youth Council in February this year to become the region's official youth voice and to advise Council on issues which it believes important. All 12 youth councillors, or nearly actually, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 here tonight, present, including our junior mayor, Josie Horn, who earlier made her first presentation on this issue to Council, and it's her second presentation that she's done, and she does an extraordinarily fantastic job each and every time. Key priorities include the planning and implementation of the 2019 Geelong Annual Youth Summit, which mentioned before, which is set to come about in October 2019 and is something that we're all very much looking forward to. Council is also recommended to note that youth councillors will be meeting on a monthly basis, which is also very important. Josie Horn will make her next quarterly presentation on behalf of the Youth Council on the 23rd of July 2019, one that we all very much look forward to. So, Mr Mayor, I move the recommendation.
Thank you kindly. Councillor Mansfield.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Josie, for your excellent presentation earlier this evening. The Geelong Youth Council are really to be commended on the work that they've done so far. It's a huge effort to put together a report like this and agree as a group of representatives on a set of priorities, and the priorities that they've identified, I think, are ones that are not just important for young people but for everyone in our community. And I think one of the real lessons for us as a senior council is we really need to listen to the youth council, because I think they're not distracted by some of the other noise that perhaps sometimes as a council we can become distracted by, and they've highlighted some of the really important issues in our community. As Josie mentioned earlier, mental health and wellbeing, community safety and homelessness, and the environment. I mean, they are really critical issues for young people growing up, but also the broader community. So I'm really looking forward to the recommendations that come from the Youth Council, and I think certainly, personally, I feel very fortunate to be receiving the recommendations that come from this group and have the opportunity to hear from young people. I think this is a really great initiative. I'd also like to congratulate the Youth Council on the great work that they've been doing out and about in the community. I've seen many of them at lots of different events. The work that they did in helping to support the Girl World Youth Innovation Summit a few weeks ago at GMHBA Stadium was really outstanding. They were all fine representatives of council, and I was really impressed with every single one of them at that event. And the other feedback that I've certainly heard around the traps is that the meetings have been some of the most impressive meetings that officers have seen in terms of the way that they run. And I think it's just a compliment to the team of young people and to Josie's leadership as well. So well done, and I certainly support the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Mansfield. Other councillors, Councillor Aiken and Councillor Contell, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Look, I just wish to echo the words of the other councillors as well too. I'm actually inspired by some of our young leaders, and I'm certainly confident about the future of Geelong when you actually hear about what our young leaders are talking about. And in particular, I'm really encouraged that nearly every single one of them is actually mentioning that mental health is a significant issue for them to want to engage in, improve awareness of. And also as well too, they're actually talking about the issue of bullying, and in particular they're actually talking about cyberbullying and the impact it is making on young people. So I think we can be very confident as a Geelong community that our future leaders are actually discussing issues that are of significant importance to the community, and hopefully the changes that they will start bringing to this council will also resonate in the wider community as well too. So, as I said at the start of this, I'm inspired by what you've done thus far. I'm looking forward to the future work that our young leaders do, and I'm really confident about our future in Geelong because of those young leaders.
Thank you, Councillor Aiken. Councillor Contell.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Look, I think most councillors all want to talk on this report, so I won't talk at length. I just think it's probably one of the more interesting items that we have on the agenda, and one of the more important items that we have on the agenda. First of all, I know that all of us were very supportive of this, but I must applaud Councillor Aitken as well, because he was really pushing quite strongly for this initiative early on, and I'm thankful to him and others for doing so. It's amazing that we hadn't come up with this concept earlier. So it's great that we finally got it here. Hearing our Junior Mayor, Josephine Horn, speak earlier on, there's no doubt that the future of Geelong is in great hands. Equally, I'm very supportive of the portfolios that have been chosen, and I think the Mayor noted it well, where he said that what we will receive here is another view through another lens, and I think that's really important for us, particularly with the items that have been chosen, and as Councillor Aitken has mentioned, cyberbullying and things of that nature. There is no doubt that the Youth Council and the members of it will be a lot closer to those matters than what we could ever be. And so, lastly, what I'd like to do is obviously congratulate you all for getting to this point, and certainly welcome you to the chamber and to part of the team. I'd like to particularly call out and congratulate and welcome junior councillors Jessie Papalato, Lulu Yoski and Maddie Pisotsky. Just wanted to welcome you to the Brownbill ward, and I'm sure that Councillor Murray and Mansfield are rapt to have you on board. And what we ask of you is, whilst you're out and about in the Brownbill ward and you're hearing of issues, please work through the system and our officers to feed that back through, and certainly as ward councillors we'll certainly try and help and engage in those matters. So congratulations to all of you. It's great to have you part of the team.
Thank you, Councillor Contell. Other councillors to speak? Councillor Murray, thank you.
Yes, I endorse all the comments made by my fellow councillors in relation to this. I particularly want to speak in relation to the Geelong Annual Youth Summit, which I was trying to find a date on that, but I think November? October. Yes. And my wish for that is that every single secondary school in the Geelong region is represented at that summit. I'm not sure how it's going to work, but sometimes we see the same schools represented at different events, and there are other secondary schools out there that perhaps don't get involved as much as others. So when the Youth Council say we're having a Geelong Annual Youth Summit, I hope there's representatives from every Geelong secondary, and then when I say Geelong, of course I mean the area, every Geelong secondary school represented at that summit. And again, endorse the comments from Councillor Contell that those three Brownbill councillors, good luck.
Thanks, Councillor Murray. Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I don't want to repeat anything that all of my colleagues have said. I just endorse them. In addition to that, I think that it's just what a wonderful opportunity it is for these young people to be having the experience of civic leadership and civic training. And I can just imagine that they're just starting off now what they're going to be like in a year or two. And they're going to get stronger and stronger and develop their capacities and skills. In addition, I also would like to welcome and thank the Bellarine youth councillors, Josie Horn, Jager Fawcett and Elkin Wittenberg, and I do look forward to an opportunity, or more than one opportunity, to meeting you in some sort of formal situation where we can share ideas. And I really do thank not only all the people who've put this together, but the officers who are at the moment providing the leadership behind the scenes. So thank you all.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Any other comments? If not, I'll go back to Councillor Sullivan to close. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I support and endorse all the comments made by my councillors before me. Not long ago, I had a resident ask me and said, "Oh, Trent, you're fairly young to be getting into local government. Are you possibly the youngest to represent the Bellarine?" I said, "I'm not sure, but if I am, it may not be for long, because come October next year, we may have some 18-year-olds, some very capable 18-year-olds coming up for the next set of council elections." We deal with a lot of issues on council. We deal with short-term, medium-term and long-term. And in this decision-making process, we need to have a variety of rich experience within our community. But we're not just making decisions that affect the community now. We're making decisions that affect the community in 30, 40, 50 years. And that's where it is vitally important that we do have our youth council to give voice to the issues that are important to them for the long term, because up to where we're all gone, I'm sure they'll still be here and making big decisions. So I support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. I put the recommendation to the vote. Those in favour, those against, that is carried. Thank you. Item 3 is the 2018-2019 loan borrowing provision of $26 million. Moved Councillor Manane and seconded Councillor Murray. Thank you, Councillor Manane.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is a motion to authorise the procurement of a loan of $26 million, a principal and fixed interest loan for the term of the next 10 years. Authorise the CEO to start the process and subsequently sign off the documentation. When we set the budget for 2018-19, our current year, we estimated a need for $42 million worth of borrowings. These loan borrowings are used for working capital expenditure forecasts on specific projects, etc. And now, based on the current requirements, it's proposed that we need 26 million of that 42 million that was budgeted in the current year's budget. That 26 million is going to be used for the construction of community facilities, developer contribution plan projects and other projects. So we're only going to need 26 of the 42. We will carry 9.6 over into next year, 6.4 over into next year for projects that will happen in the 19-20 budget, and the other 9.6 will be deferred and maybe reassessed for future needs, but not just at the moment. And if we do authorise this borrowings of 26 million, as at the 3rd of June, our loan borrowings will sit at $65.6 million. So I recommend the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Manane. Councillor Murray?
Yes, Councillor Manane has covered all the relevant and important matters from this report, picked up everything, and as such, nothing further to add, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Any other councillors to make comment at this point? If not, I'll go back to Councillor Manane to close.
Nothing further, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. I put the recommendation to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? That is carried. Thank you. Item 4 is the official renaming of Stewart's Reserve, Armstrong Creek to Dooley Beale. Moved Councillor Mansfield and seconded Councillor Mason. Thank you, Councillor Mansfield.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. We've heard earlier tonight from Vicky Grosser from One Fire about this item, and it is wonderful to be moving this motion this evening, asking Council to consider renaming Stewart's Reserve, which is in Armstrong Creek, to Dooley Beale. Dooley Beale is a traditional Waterfront name associated with the area. It means red gum, and reflects the history of the site and the traditional language associated with the site, but also it was actually the name of the original settler John Stewart's homestead. The original name was Dooley Beale. So this is this renaming is the result of work that's taken place with the Waterfront traditional owners, but also with the Stewart family, and they're incredibly supportive of this move to rename the reserve. More broadly, I think this is an important step that we're taking. We're currently in the process of developing our first reconciliation action plan as a council, and an issue that has been raised is that recognition of history and culture, and partly doing that through language, is something that our community is telling us they would like to see the city do more of. So this is something that will, using traditional Waterfront language to name places and areas of significance in our municipality, is something that I'm quite certain will be a part of our reconciliation action plan when it's finalised. So given it's Reconciliation Week this week, I think it's an appropriate item to be moving as a council, and I strongly commend this motion to my fellow councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Mansfield. Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I too strongly endorse the sentiments put by Councillor Mansfield, and I want to emphasise that it is Reconciliation Week this week, and it's really quite symbolic that we're making this gesture tonight, that it's symbolic of our commitment towards meaningful and practical reconciliation between the broader community and all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, specifically here, of course, the Waterfront. Mr Mayor, this is really quite consistent with government policy going back to Governor Gipps in the 1800s, and it was to avoid names being appropriated by other countries. Unfortunately, later in the 20th century and until the mid-70s, government assimilation policies banned or discouraged Aboriginal people from practising their culture and using their language, which also contributed to a loss of connection between culture, language, places and their significance. Mr Mayor, this was all part of the story, not the whole story, but part of the story of the stolen generation. Because of all of this, much language and culture was lost. And of course, here we have an opportunity to redress this wrong. There's a lot more I could say, but I think I'd just like to refer to and thank Vicky Gosser for her sentiments today, and to say, in terms of connecting with country, I've learnt that it shows goodwill and good manners to learn a few simple words whilst in another country. And many of us have travelled, and I would assume that we all have learnt a few words of those different cultures. The first word I often learn is thank you. Thank you is one of those first words we might use when one is in another country. In Waterfront country, the word for thank you is nyatni. Next time I visit Dooleyville, I will remember to say nyatni. So, Mr Mayor, I support this proposal, and I also say nyatni to Vicky Gosser for her sentiments tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Other councillors to make comment? Councillor Contell and Councillor Nelson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Of course, I'm supportive of this report tonight, and as many would be aware, for about 6.5 years I actually held the Aboriginal portfolio, and it was certainly an educational journey for me. And what many of the Aboriginals taught me and spoke to me about during that period of time was that, it's not always about the big things, it's actually some of the smaller and symbolic things that we do that make people feel welcome, particularly our First People, whether it be the ones that are traditional owners, whether it be ones that are residing here on the land, or whether it be those that are visiting. And it was interesting, just in my social media memories came up this week that it was in fact this exact council meeting in 2014 that we signed and adopted the Statement of Intent and the Aboriginal Action Plan in 2014 in Lara, in fact, the meeting was. And it was symbolic and momentous because we had the Waterfront and the Watherong there signing the Statement of Intent, and our Mayor and CEO of the time. Shortly after that, we, with encouragement from One Fire and Vicky Gosser, and also the Aboriginal elders and people from Geelong, the community from Geelong, they encouraged us to erect a third flagpole on City Hall, and it was at that point in time that we again adopted to have an Aboriginal flag flying proudly, prominently and permanently on City Hall, and you see that now when you drive past, it's always flying in that manner. So today is another one of those symbolic and maybe smaller gestures that are very important to many and will be for generations to come. So I applaud Councillor Mansfield, who I'm sure has been involved in this initiative, at One Fire and any others that have been supporting it. I'm sure that it's Watherong and the Waterfront. And what's really nice to read here is that it seems like this has been a really amicable agreement that's been struck, which there's the renaming, obviously, of the reserve, but also the retaining of the Stewart surname for the walkway. So I think that's a really nice touch. So well done to all of you.
Thank you, Councillor Contell. Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Something that I like about this, I mean, the name is a great name, and obviously because of its historic significance, but also something little known that I learnt in 2014 whilst traipsing around the Bellarine. Names have to be different, because if there's an emergency event, paramedics or whatever they are, firemen, police, need to get the name right of the street. And going through a place in Clifton Springs, they've got streets all within the same area. I'll just read them out: Coolabah, Corrane, Cataline, Connie, Clearwater, Coral, Cameo, Carnival, Caraval, Country Club, Cabana, Calumet, all in the same area. If I was a paramedic or a fiery or a policeman trying to make head or tail of that, that would just be crazy. So I think this name, yes, it's a great Indigenous name, but it's also a name that's so different from everything else. It will be quite easy for our emergency services to find. And if we get a chance in this council or next council to change those names in Clifton Springs, I think that'd be a good thing too, because I think that's quite dangerous, all those names like that. I really do. Anyway, thank you for that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Councillor Aiken, thank you.
Look, I just wish to take discussion back up to the higher level again, if that's okay. Look, this is about being a respectful community. I'm really excited, not just about this occurring during this week, because it was Reconciliation Week. It was also National Sorry Day in recognition of that significant event that occurred. It is, or council actually is about to release its draft reconciliation plan. That's the first time that the City of Greater Geelong is actually producing such a document like that. And there's so many other wonderful things that are actually happening in building a respectful relationship with the First People of Australia. The Uluru Statement from the Heart still is something that we have to deal with as a community, and I'm pleased that the Indigenous community hasn't walked away from that. They do believe that they can achieve something from that particular document. And certainly in Victoria, incredibly, we're actually in the throngs of actually starting a treaty process with our First People. And during the month of July is actually the voting period for the 50,000 Indigenous people in Victoria that have a right to actually vote to establish the Indigenous grouping that is actually going to start the discussions and development of the treaty. So the momentum associated with us as European and Anglo-Saxon and colonising people and creating the respect with our First People is something we're doing just slightly tonight with the name that we're actually undertaking, but it is has been touched on by other councillors. The symbolism associated by this cannot be underestimated, and I am very encouraged that I'm living in a community that's very respectful of its First People.
Thank you, Councillor Aiken. Any other comments before I go back to Councillor Mansfield? I'll just make some very brief comments again, just I guess concurring with the comments made by my fellow councillors this evening. And I was very lucky, I think, to be one of the original councillors on the Aboriginal Affairs portfolio, and then succeeded by Councillor Contell, who did 6 years. Oh, was it? Okay, so short spell there, then 6 years, Councillor Contell, in that role. And I found it incredibly educational for that period of time, about 3 years or so. And it was quite compelling, some of the issues that we discussed and the manner in which they were discussed and the respect that was actually shown during that period. And you know, it's been a very slow process, but I think it's been methodical, and we're now starting to see, I guess, far greater reasons why we are continuing the discussion and the importance of it to us as a community overall, that the whole community understand about our First Nations people and their contribution to our country before we arrived, but more importantly, since we've arrived and even today. We see incredible history and benefits that perhaps we just need to sit back and reflect and take the time to understand. And this week's a good week to do that. Councillor Mansfield, to close. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you to all my fellow councillors for your comments. I think everyone in their own way acknowledged that reconciliation and healing only comes about through learning and understanding. We learn and understand through language and storytelling. We use language to connect with one another. We use language to understand our past. Although, as has been mentioned, this is a small symbolic gesture, it is incredibly important, I'm very supportive of the comments that have been made by fellow councillors, and I, as I said, commend this motion.
Excuse me. Put the recommendation to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? That is carried. Thank you. Excuse me. Item 5, Geelong Waterfront Safe Harbour Precinct Master Plan Final Report. Moved Councillor Murray and seconded Councillor Contell. Sorry, Councillor Aiken. My apologies. Councillor Murray to move. Councillor Aiken to second. Sorry, Councillor Aiken.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The purpose of this tonight is to seek council endorsement for the Geelong Waterfront Safe Harbour Precinct Master Plan. This follows the meeting on the 12th of March where we agreed to public exhibition of the draft master plan for a period of 21 days to seek further stakeholder feedback. So all that's been achieved. Now the next step is to endorse the Geelong Waterfront Safe Harbour project. Importantly, if endorsed tonight, this will release the council's contribution of $3 million, which will go directly to the building of the wave attenuator and also path upgrade to Eastern Beach. And the endorsement tonight, as I understand, will also release the state government's contribution. This project has received widespread media attention, and the Yacht Club has undertaken 2 rounds of community consultation with good support for the project. Key themes of the project: enhancement of the pedestrian experience with views and sight lines being up and over, retention of the commercial vehicle access to piers at the Fisherman's Basin, and retention of the commercial fishing berthing facilities, and also retaining the helicopter joy flight business. And I love this one, maximising public access to the wave attenuator for recreational fishing. So, Mr Mayor, this is another night in the process that we've gone through with the Yacht Club over a period of time, and at this stage endorse this recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Aiken, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor, and thank you, fellow portfolio holder, for social infrastructure planning within the City of Greater Geelong, which this project actually falls under that portfolio as well too. I just actually want to make mention that this project actually is a great example of governments working together for the benefit of the broader community. This project is a project that's supported at local government level with funding, it is a project that's supported at state government level, and it is a project that's supported at federal government level. And in fact, the outcomes that the community is going to get in terms of the broader Geelong community and the immediate yachting community is fantastic. And certainly I hope it's a blueprint to actually put before the state and federal governments to say, look what we've done at the waterfront, look what we could do out in the northern suburbs with the Northern Arc, because certainly to me I believe that project fits the same type of community benefits that this project has delivered. Tonight, this is the conclusion of the master planning process. What should be remembered that a lot of this land is actually public land, which is why we actually had to go through a master planning process. And what is exciting about what has been developed from this master plan is that it actually is opening up the Yacht Club to a greater access to the community than it ever has had before. And the infrastructure that's being built and the proposals that are being put forward are actually going to further create strong linkages between Geelong and the waterfront through the Yacht Club area and this master plan. And so the only other thing I do wish to do is congratulate everybody involved in this. people have had to be patient for this process, and it actually has been quite a quick process in terms of a normal master planning undertaking that is required when there is public ownership of land. And I do wish to publicly acknowledge our own officers that have worked quite strongly with this project. I also wish to acknowledge the state government officers through the Department of Environment, Water and Lands who and Department of Regional Development Victoria who've been involved in this project as well too. And I also wish to congratulate the Yacht Club and the significant staff hours that they've put into this project as well too. Geelong will benefit from greater linkage with its most significant natural asset, which is the water in Corio Bay, and this project is shown by that with an investment of $19.1 million. This is actually only stage one for the Safe Harbour project, and there's significantly more work and vision that is required to and funding to be able to finish future components of it. But I'm very pleased that it's this council that's been able to deliver the rejuvenation of the Yacht Club through partnership with the state and federal government.
Thank you, Councillor Aiken, and apologies for the confusion earlier with the seconding. Councillor Contell.
Oh, thank you, Mr Mayor. That's okay. Councillor Aiken and I work closely together, so it's not a problem, not offended at all. Look, I know that, and we know that this plan has been a little challenging, but they all are. And we just need to continue to try to guide and assist and support the process. We often talk about, it's exciting times, it's another exciting project, and I know that we throw that word around a lot, but it really is an exciting project and an exciting time in Geelong. Probably not, and others can comment, probably not since the Kennett government spearheaded the Waterfront development all those years ago has there been another project such as this down by the Waterfront. And I know that there are many areas that we need to be focusing on, and we are, and particularly the ward councillors, and Councillor Aitken certainly mentioned the Northern Arc, which is extremely important, but I'll focus more so on this area in the Brownville ward for the moment, that, I think we're going to look back at the Waterfront and the CBD in the next 10 years, particularly once projects such as the Convention Centre, this particular project specifically, are developed, and it'll be a completely different lay on the land. Geelong is still a really inviting place to invest, and those that are doing so now will certainly benefit from the fruits of their labour in the next 5 to 10 years. This project here, stage one, is, yes, it's exciting, but what's more so exciting is actually stage two and stage three, which really starts to open up this area of the waterfront to our community. We need to do more work on the western side of the waterfront, and we're slowly starting to work on that in areas such as St Helens and all the way up to Osborne House to make beautiful connections all the way along that waterfront. But I think, as others have said, particularly Councillor Aitken, that it's a great model where, the Royal Geelong Yacht Club are obviously putting skin in the game, and so they should, of some $3 million. We are putting $3 million in towards this project, particularly focusing on the attenuator and the improvements on the public realm areas, which is most important for us. The federal government putting some $5.5 million in, and also the state putting 7.6 in. So it's a real commitment from all levels of government and the Yacht Club. I think with that said, we asked the community though, with all of these types of projects, particularly major projects such as this nature, whilst we're working through it, it's challenging and exciting. When we get the master plan with the artist's impressions and the photos, it's certainly attractive and exciting. But once the work starts, as we always say, it's ugly in the middle. So please bear with us. There will be some disruptions as this project goes ahead. There'll be some challenges to work through that period of time, but the end result really will be magnificent.
Thank you, Councillor Contell. Other councillors to make comment? Not, I'll go back to Councillor Murray to close.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you for my fellow councillors' comments in relation to the project. It is an exciting project, and I want to acknowledge those in the gallery from the Yacht Club here tonight. I think they've been here many times, so we'll tick them off again, and we might see you back here at another stage perhaps. But and I want to use this opportunity again. I've spoken about the Eastern Beach a couple of times in the gallery. We have the Yacht Club, and as Councillor Contal has said, we need Western Beach. Certainly, huge works there. Like if that could be done, but I personally would like to see the Eastern Beach end really brought up into this century. I think it gets a new lick of paint every year, but I think it needs more than that. But with that, with the Yacht Club, the whole Safe Harbour precinct is exciting. And I might just say that the master plan has been modified following that community feedback, and other changes would be looked at in more detail during the next stage of design. That's all, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. I'll put the recommendation to the vote. Those in favour, those against, that is carried. Thank you. Item 6 is listed as a contractual matter, confidential. I've had discussions with the CEO and also our governance officer about bringing that particular item to the open chamber this evening. So we'll hear that in open chamber, which is, considering it's a community investment matter. But I need to, first of all, get a mover and a seconder to do that, to bring it into the open chamber. So move Councillor Murnane, seconded Councillor Sullivan. Those in favour, those against, that is carried. Thank you. Yep. So can I get a mover, please, for the actual motion? That'll be for the item right. It's Councillor Murnane and seconded Councillor Murray. Thank you, Councillor Murnane.
I'll just find it, Mr Mayor. Good. This is an item regarding the Community Investment Support Fund, seeking endorsement for the Community Investment Support Fund. The independent panel had a round 2 of funding for the period December and February. We have an independent panel that assesses these applications. We did run a round of the fund, and that was ticked off in November in the current year's budget. But there were 3 of the grant programs that did not exhaust all of the available funds, so there was some Community Facilities Infrastructure Fund had 155. So we've now in this second round we've got funding recommendations in the Community Facilities Investment Infrastructure Fund of 155,000. In the Healthy and Connected Communities Fund, 93,000, and in the Heritage, 104,000. There is a little bit of money that will be carried forward into next year. All of the actual successful applicants are listed in the report, about 44 if I can count accurately at this late stage. And in reading through the applicants, I think one thing that strikes me tonight with our junior council here, and we as a council deal with a lot of matters around. I think the words are rates, roads, and the 3 R's. Someone might help me. Rubbish, rates, roads, and rubbish, as well as a lot of other important things. So please let me underscore the good work of this council. But a very focus on a lot of physical things. Yet we've heard from the junior mayor and we've heard from the junior council of their priorities were more of a social manner, and you'd expect that to be the case. And looking through these grants here tonight, there is a splattering of that sort of application. Only a splattering. There was one there around social inclusion to assist older people. There's the workshops around disability, and there's also another one, a project about improving life skills of people. So I guess, they'll come through our healthy communities, no doubt. I suspect if in 10 years' time and the junior council are in full swing, that balance might have changed some. We'll have a lot more of those social matters in our grant program, and let's hope that's the case. One of the things that we have done, as my fellow councillors would know, in 2019 and 20, we've increased the dollar the dollar figure to $8 million in the new council, in the new budget for 2019-20, which is a 30% increase. So there is great opportunity for the community to actually seek and get more money from council with an improved program and also a program with expanded criteria. So there's great opportunity for the community to come to us for opportunities and to do their good work in the community. And one of the really important things that, as is mentioned in this report, there were 4 applications that weren't considered because they were not on council land, but under the new program, that's just one of the expanded criteria that we are going to be able to assist clubs operating in a community nature on non-council land, and I believe we're going to contact those 4 clubs and make them aware of it so that they do apply for the new program, which opens in May. So that's tomorrow almost. So it's a great pleasure that I have the opportunity to recommend these 40-odd grants and congratulate the community for the work they're doing and will do with that money. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Manane. Councillor Murray.
Yes, once again, Councillor Manane sums it up pretty well. It's Council recognises the needs for these grants, and as I understand it, there's still $162,852 carryover to the next financial year. So there's greater opportunity for these groups, these clubs, for a more variety of grants that they may be applicable to. So these will go up on the website, I imagine, almost straight away, so that they will know. They'll be able to see if their applications have been successful or not. And whilst I'm talking on grants, I just wanted to mention a night that was held in Geelong last Wednesday night, the Geelong Community Foundation. And you're talking about grants. There was $1,014,000 in grants offered to 57 organisations, different charities around Geelong last Wednesday night, which is just amazing. It's and those funds that were allocated, of course, have been contributed by members of the Geelong community. So we're a very charitable organisation. As a city, we see the need, and for those who can, dip into their pockets. So that was just an amazing result, and largely goes unnoticed, I think. So I just wanted to mention that tonight. So I'm back on the Community Investment Support Fund. Drifted a little bit, but yeah, nothing further to add in relation to that, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Other councillors to make comment? Councillor Contell, thank you.
Just quickly, look, it's this type of support that allows these somewhat smaller organisations to be able to survive and be sustainable. I think now that as a councillor group or group of councillors, now that we're starting to get our head around how this works, I think we'll all agree the importance of us continuing to engage with our communities, particularly through the offices, to help other communities that perhaps aren't as capable or haven't been as capable in the past and haven't had the capacity to be able to put submissions in, that we've recognised that there is a real need for us to assist in this manner. You know, you have to sell a lot of party pies and sausage rolls, or in the Serbian parish youth club's case, Chavape, to be able to you know, come up with funding such as we see here. And I'm sure that North Geelong Football Netball Club will be thrilled with the funding that's being supported for the digital electronic scoreboard, leaving there at third quarter on the weekend. I'm pretty sure that the score was 110 to 2 points, but maybe it was just that I couldn't see the scoreboard properly, and I'm sure that I'll be able to see that properly once they put this digital screen in.
Thank you, Councillor Contell. Councillor Aiken, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Look, I just wish to also acknowledge that Councillor Gresbeck, who's not here tonight, actually did ask us to put this out out of confidentiality and actually do it in the public open. Kylie was strong that this is actually a good news story in terms of council giving back community their money, because essentially that's actually what we're doing with the grants program. This is the community's money, which we collect in rates and other fees and charges that we have, and this is actually an opportunity for us to give back to the community. I'm encouraged tonight, I think it's the venturers that we have here tonight, is that right? I hope, fellas and girls, that you both put in an application for the next round of grants for some projects that you wish to do, because you are eligible to actually put forward under our grant projects. And what this council has actually done is put significant work into how to reform our policies and our grant programs to try and make it easier for the community to be able to apply for grants. We still have a very long way to go. We will review the next grant funding round for the new financial year with an intent of even trying to improve that again. Clearly, we'll also have to assess the amount of resources we've got internally in the organisation to be able to respond and support the community with grants. One thing that I'm certainly strong on is that I don't believe the grants should go to the person that's best writing the grants, and at this point in time that certainly does seem to be the success factor that there is in place. I actually wanted an equitable basis for everybody to be able to access the grant money that we have in the City of Greater Geelong, and fortunately we are talking up hardship and disadvantage, and also looking at our criteria for assessment that a greater weighting is given to those parts of our community that are in greater need for financial support through grants. So this is another step in the process of actually doing that. The number of clubs and organisations will be quite excited after the public announcements that are made tonight, and I look forward to the new round. As Councillor Monane has said, there's about $8.9 million worth of funding that's available in the new grant programs for 1920. So that's a significant investment that's been put into grassroots community in Geelong, and I encourage everybody to learn about the process, to ask for help in terms of putting your application together, and may the community build great capital and social investment that comes from these projects being funded.
Thank you, Councillor Aiken. Any other comments? Councillor Sullivan, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And I endorse the words of the councillors before me. The grants process is not necessarily an easy process, as it is, in its essence, a competition for money. But there are some worthy tales in here, and there's some congratulations which need to be thrown around. For instance, the Geelong Animal Welfare Society and Geelong Animal Rescue, two different organisations which often get putting together, both getting money. And of course I want to give a shout out to the world famous St Leonard's and District Greek Elderly Citizens Club, which managed to get a grant. And anybody in our society who has a yaya or a papas will know how important they are. But that just leads on that it is impressive that an organisation like that can write a proper grant application. It is no easy process, and we do need to keep in contact with the clubs and organisations to educate and help facilitate, not only just in what grants are available, but the process itself. So whilst my councillors have also alluded to, this is a process that is showing that it's working, it also needs some fine-tuning, and we will be reflecting on that. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Thank you, Councillor Mansfield.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I certainly support the words of fellow councillors. I think one of the best parts of being a councillor is getting out and about and seeing all the great work that takes place in the community. I think we're privileged to have to really be able to see a lot of that work that takes place, and grants programs like this give us another snapshot into the work that all sorts of different clubs and organisations do in our community. And this grants program is an opportunity for us to provide some support to those wonderful organisations that are doing so much to build community connection and address a whole range of issues and community needs. As has been alluded to by other councillors, I think one of the things we recognised as a council was that although this is a fantastic program, there were things that needed to be addressed. Firstly, the total pool of funds needed to be expanded because there's a lot of demand for our grants, and so we're planning to do that in the future. We also recognised that there were some factors around eligibility that meant some clubs that were quite worthy due to the eligibility criteria couldn't apply, and we'll see some changes in the next rounds to address that. And I think importantly, and this is an area we'll have to continue to monitor, is that grant programs can sometimes inadvertently reinforce disadvantage because applying for a grant is not always an easy thing for organisations to do. Many community organisations are time poor. They don't necessarily have volunteers who are able to put together really compelling grant applications, and on the flip side, other organisations can often, be very professional at putting together grants, and they tend to attract more and more grants because of that, because of their previous success and their experience in writing grants. So we've made some changes to the program to hopefully provide some more assistance to groups with the application process. As Councillor Aiken mentioned, we've introduced some further hardship provisions for clubs that are experiencing hardship, and we've also looked at the weighting when we're assessing for our panel when they're assessing applications to try and broaden the criteria around community benefit and being able to demonstrate that and take some of the emphasis off some of the other elements that perhaps were making it harder for certain clubs to achieve success in this program. So I'm looking forward to seeing even more grants provided to the various community groups who do great work in our municipality with future grant rounds. But if this report is successfully passed, I congratulate all the recipients of these grants and thank them for the great work that they're doing in our community.
Thank you, Councillor Mansfield. Other comments to be made? If not, I'll go back to Councillor Manane to close. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you everybody for that contribution. A lot of great points made. Can I just say how lucky we are as a community? I mean, we're talking about $8.2 million from ratepayers' funds. Councillor Murray here has mentioned that the Geelong Community Foundation exceeded $1 million this year, I think, for the first time. Give Where You Live consistently exceed $2 million, and Geelong Connected Communities, who I'm involved with myself, about 350. So that's about $11.5 million worth of funds available to the community for the sort of work that we're talking about here, and it's a great credit to our city that both publicly and commercially we have mechanisms and goodwill from both areas to build a fund like that for the betterment of the city. So. It's quite overwhelming when you think about the impact that amount of money can have on the Geelong community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moran. I put the recommendation to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? That is carried. Thank you. Just to move in a second to move item 7 into confidential, please. Move Councillor Contell, seconded Councillor Asher. Those in favour? Those against? That is carried into confidential. Thank you. Section C, Assembly of Council. Move and seconded, please. Moved Councillor Sullivan, seconded Councillor Manane. Those in favour, those against, that is carried. Thank you. The planning delegations, moved and seconded, please. Moved Councillor Sullivan, seconded Councillor Aiken. Those in favour, those against, that is carried. Thank you. And just a move and seconded to go into confidential. Moved Councillor Sullivan, seconded Councillor Mansfield. Those in favour, those against, that is carried. We're moving to confidential. And at that point, we thank the gallery and for coming along this evening. And we hope we've given you a bit of, a sense of the work your council's engaged in, the diversity and the variety of it, and the impact that we're having on the community. So we thank you for coming in, and we say good night. And we thank you